something that kind of happened in parallel to this was I had always had a curiosity about how bands come up with their names. 30 Seconds to Mars, Third Eye Blind, Three Doors Down. Just, even Linkin Park now, obviously you can Google how they got the name, but I just thought like, yeah, it's so creative and odd. And I was on vacation and walking out of the room while my dad was watching TV, and a scene came up that was like, I think it was like a advertisement for something, maybe even the movie Secret Garden, which I hadn't watched, I don't think like ever, but I'm just thinking back now with the adult brain. And it was just this beautiful scene of this garden with this moonlight just cascading down. And it's just the slow camera movement, and it was just this mood. And I was walking out of the door, and I just had this thought, ooh, actually, Moon Garden is a cool name for a band. Spoiler, a band like that exists. I haven't listened to their music, but I found that out a few years later that a band with that name exists. So, I mean, I wasn't wrong, but that day when I was thinking about, oh, this band, Moon Garden, could be very cool, I walked to my room, I sat down on my bed, thinking about this name, and I was like, actually, that would be a very cool name for a book. And I'm sitting there on my bed, wondering, why would it be called Moon Garden? Like, what type of book would that be? And the best way I can describe it is I got a vision that played out in front of me of this girl with the black long hair walking into this garden that I'd just seen on the TV, like slowly walking there. There's some spoilers in here, I'm not going to give it now. And that scene triggered my curiosity so much that I kept asking questions like, why is she doing this? Why is this happening? Where is she going? And this story just started unpacking himself. Like, I mean, he packed his suitcases and he arrived there and he just started packing out everything. And I was flabbergasted. I remember running back up to my mom and I was like, Mom, you won't believe what just happened. And I was like, I just got this story and I think it is huge. I just felt this gravity of this story. And funny enough, I remember, oh, the arrogance of youth. I remember telling my mom, I don't want to be a writer, but I need to write this story. So I'm just going to write this story and then I'm done. Oh, Lord. Because it's easy, of course, to be English second language and then write a whole ass novel or 3 in that language when you have no writing background. Fantastic. So I sat my little ass down and I wrote. We were at the sea, at the ocean, however you want to say it, beachside, cake by the ocean. No, not that. And I don't think I put my feet in the water once. I was literally sat under our little gazebo, and your bro was writing, my dude. I was writing, and I wrote the first page, and it sucked. It sucked so much. I remember years later finding the crumpled up page, that first page. I'm actually sad I crumpled it up, but I found it. It was a good laugh. But I read it to my mom, and she was so gracious. I just have to give a shout out to my mom. She saw a diamond in a raw form, covered in. So shout out to moms for seeing the gold where other people will just see bark. Like, That's a nice version of what I wanted to say. And she very gently kind of directed me that I can't really even pinpoint, but she did so well. And I scratched that page and started from scratch. And the points that she'd made honestly warped the story into something different from what I was projecting. Because I had that scene, which is still in the book, by the way. I think it's in chapter 5 or 8. Not 100% sure which one. I think it's chapter 5. I don't know. Maybe 8. I don't know. And I was trying to work towards the scene, being a complete novice and a dumbass. So I ended up writing the entire draft while studying second year engineering, which was a mistake, let me tell you that. But I finished the first draft, the first handwritten draft, which I am looking at the binder containing all of those pages. I finished in 10 months, 11 months. I think I was done by November. And then I can't actually then I started typing it. I didn't have my own computer at home, so I got a PC then, and then I typed everything out. And I mean, it started at 132,000 words. I wrote that shit down, bruh. So it was a mammoth project just to type everything over. And then as I was typing it, I was obviously making some little edits and stuff. And then, as most, I hope most first-time writers, you think that you've just created the most amazing thing that the world has ever seen. And I can't remember exactly what happened in the interim between then and 2012, because that is like I started in 2010. I don't know what happened in 2011, but I published it in 2012. So if you see that name on a different author's name, it is the same book. But for some reason, I can't wipe it. Not for some reason, I know the reason. I can't wipe it out of existence. So it's still on Goodreads. I think the description is there as well. I tried to remove it. It didn't want to. So that is fun, to publish something because you're naive and young, and then you just can't erase it. So, by the way, the name I chose is not because I'm being funny or something. I mean, people that know me and speak my language can't spell my name or say it properly. So I didn't want to deal with that. So I chose something that would be a bit more international. So I'm not trying to hide my name or anything. It was just a practical decision. So there were some edits done. I had some beta readers, but like I said, that's a bit of a dead space. I can't remember much about that. Published it in 2012, unpublished it 2 months later because a friend had bought the Kindle version, and she was like, "Baby, I love you. It's a great story, but this is not publish ready." And I really, to this day, really respect the fact that she said that to me. She is actually in my acknowledgements, because that I'm eternally thankful for that. Then I'm not going to give much background, but let's just say I started writing a different book in 2016, which I also published. You will also find it under this current pseudonym, or whatever you want to call it, pen name. So I guess a better word. I have unpublished it because I thought I'd got an editor, but because I'm actually Afrikaans, I struggle a bit to grammar sometimes. It happens with the small stuff. And the editor I'd gotten didn't really do what I thought he did. Anyway, that's a story for a different day. But it was actually 2018 when I was trying to rewrite that book that Charmed Vigilance just would not allow me to. I don't know how else to say it. I would be busy with scenes for that book that has absolutely nothing in common with Charmed Vigilance. And I would just get like ideas for Charmed Vigilance. It's just like ideas. And I had done some edits since 2012 where I'd given it to beta readers and whoever was willing to read it. There were a couple of people, they loved it. And it wasn't people that would have lied. So it was people that didn't know me personally. It would be like my brother's friend's sister that said that she would like to read the fantasy book. There was multiple situations like that. So that's what encouraged me to feel like, okay, the language is the problem with the grammar or whatever. It's not the actual story. And so there was a lot of edits that took place. Colette also told me the ending was unacceptable in 2012. So I added, I think, 3 chapters. There wasn't, no, it was more, but I split it and shoveled it around and added stuff. Anyway, so back to 2018, I am trying to work on the other book. I'm also renaming it, so it doesn't help me saying the name. And Charmed Vigilance is just harassing me, so I relinquished. And as I read it, I was like, oof, this is rough. Because it was in first person present tense, so I got stuck in the whole, I am thirsty. I am going to get some water. Because you're like first person present tense, you're in the person's mind. It was a mess. So, as you do, I rewrote the entire novel to past tense. And at that stage, it was 147,000 words. So that was a pretty project, let me tell you that. So I did that and then did some edits and stuff. And then 2022, the same thing happened, where it was again me being like, I'm going to publish Heart Eater. I said it. I'm going to republish it. I'm going to rewrite it because I didn't feel like my actual voice. And Charmed Vigilance was like, no thanks. Nope. That will be me. It's going to be me. And so I read Charmed Vigilance again for the first time in 2 or so years. And I was mortified. I just need to insert here, when I realized the language thing isn't so good after publishing, I obviously started researching how to become a better writer. And hi, are you wondering what happened? Well, that makes 2 of us. My mic decided to, how you say, die in the most important part of that video. So I'm re-recording it and I'm gonna retry to remember everything that I said. I'm a bit miffed. I'm a lot miffed because it was kind of, yeah, you'll hear. So I was saying that I didn't read much, so I decided, well, I need to become a better writer. And I read up on how to become a better writer. I think I might have said this and then I'll just cut it. And every video that I looked up and tried to research said that you need to write a lot, of course, but you need to read even more. And I didn't read at all. So I started reading more, like very focused reading. And I decided to jump into classics. So the reason I thought classics would be the best way was because they're classics. So it's like the books that you want to be like, hey, I also read that book. So that was the main reason why I ended up going for the classics. Classics like Lord of the Rings, Dorian Gray, Frankenstein, Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, Jane Eyre, so and Alice in Wonderland, so stuff like that, kind of like the OG godfathers of writing. So and Dante's Inferno. Yeah, I just basically decided to jump into that. And at the end of 2021, so you're about in November, December, I reread Charmed Vigilance again, and it was bad. I was mortified. So I decided to completely rewrite the entire book from scratch. So this would be the second time I rewrote it, and that doesn't take into account like the little edits and scene changes that I've edited over the years. So I basically decided I'm going to completely start from scratch, and my approach was at first to kind of read like a paragraph and then say it in my own words. But later on, I got to the point where I literally just read the chapter and then went to a different page and completely just rewrote it myself. And I added a few stuff. And now the interesting thing is 2022 was a very difficult year for me. It was a tough year. And that had some interesting impacts on my writing and on me, of course. But let's just say I went through my first breakup, like ever, and I had a bit of a tough living situation at that stage, and some other things happened as well, which I will share in due time. If you see me looking at the notes, no, you don't. So I started rewriting the book, and here in February, I was finished up to chapter 6. There's 16 chapters in total, and I had a colleague that was there from the start of when I started the job, and he was always very interested in reading the book out of curiosity, and I just refused. But when I rewrote it, I felt very proud of what I had written, so I gave him the chapters as I was writing them. I also had another friend that I gave chapter to chapter to, and he gave like very detailed feedback on the book. So I gave it to this colleague of mine. He was an older guy. I think he's 8 years my senior. So gave it to him, and he was just so so supportive. He was just amazing. It's like he would read a section and then he'd run out of his office and come give like commentary and be like, oh, that and bit of that. What was that? Sorry, I just remembered something I haven't thought of in in years. It's a bit of a spoiler, but not really. Maybe I'll share it a little bit later on, but I just had this memory of him basically warping a word in the book that he'd read, and it was very, very funny. I just remembered it. That's actually a sweet memory to have back. So he was just so excited, and he liked reading sci-fi fantasy and sci-fi mostly. He also liked Jack Reacher, but he told me he thinks that I should start writing romantic sci-fi because apparently that's not, let's say women aren't in that sphere that much, and women tend to be better with romance. Don't come for me, Nicholas Sparks fans. We all know that like women written by men trope. Not all men, of course, but in general, I can very quickly tell like if a series or something was written by a man in how they portray women. I'm not going to mention the one that I recently discovered because that's going to peeve people off. But anyway, so he was just so amped and so excited about it. But then the breakup came in March, and I could not write at all. I could not touch. I mean, I opened the Word document, tried to write, because I didn't want to fall into the habit of not completing the project again. I just couldn't write. I just couldn't write. And this colleague was obviously harassing me because he wanted to read the rest. And he started making the joke that he's never going to get the opportunity to read chapter 7. Obviously, like, roasting me for taking so incredibly long. So I also, in the space of rewriting this again. Now, we're talking about year 12 of sitting with this project that just would not leave me alone. So I basically sat in the car one day and I was just kind of fed up. It just felt pretty heavy in my hands, if I'm honest. So I just decided to give it to God, and I was just like, I don't want this thing anymore. It's weighing me down. Now, not in a way like I'm throwing it in the trash, but it was more like an emotional distancing in a way. And I can't really explain to you why it was heavy. I think it was perhaps because usually if I get a hobby and I get bored with it, I just move on with my life. And it's like, oh, okay, whatever. And I tried it, didn't like it, didn't stick. But this thing just kept nagging me in the back of my mind. And I have so many books that I want to write, but they just will not leave me alone. I mean, I started a sci-fi book in it was actually in COVID. I remember, because I fell down a black hole with some videos on space. So I started writing it in 2020 about, and I'm telling you guys, it has nothing to do with Charmed Vigilance. There's nothing related. And that book just will not let me go. It's like a psycho ex. It's just like, oh, give me attention. So I was just like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Psychologically carrying this thing around. So I couldn't write for a long time. And then in June, that's now June 2022, I started writing again. And then the next big one of the trifecta hit me. And the friend who had been so enthusiastic and made a joke about never being able to read chapter 7 passed away. It was very unexpected. I literally saw him at work that morning, and that evening he was gone. So that's why in the book, in the dedications, I mention him, because I think his enthusiasm really meant a lot at that stage. Because it's one thing if you are writing a thing and everyone's telling you it's crap and to stop, but to have people that have read a lot and have, I would say, a man 8 years my senior, they have different tastes than the average woman of my age. So for men to also enjoy the story was encouraging. So that threw me off a bit. And I have to say, and I noticed it when I was writing, and this is with the breakup, the tough living situation, my friend dying. It's the first friend that I had to say goodbye to in that way in my life. It really, I don't know how to describe it, but it absolutely put a different tone on the way I wrote. I don't even know how to describe it, but imagine being an artist and suddenly you just grasp the concept of shading and shadows. and suddenly your entire picture starts popping and looking better and more realistic, and just the layers and the depth came out from the pain, which was very interesting. And that's also why I think it's better maybe to do art and stuff a little bit later in life, because then you've gone through some stuff. But we live and we learn. So that was in June, and I finished the rewrites quite a bit later in the year, of course. And then I sat with the next issue where I needed to get a proper editor. Now, just bear in mind, I'm self-publishing a 147,000 word book. You pay by the word with editing. That's a pretty damn penny. Okay, so that's a lot of money. And quite frankly, I was like, I don't think I can pay that. So I needed an editor, and I ended up getting someone that she's not in the publishing industry for novels, but she does edit documents and stuff. And she's like a proper editor, but just not for books. So she was excited about the challenge of taking this on. However, that obviously comes with the situation where I'm not paying her, so I can't really dictate a timeline. And I ended up getting her last edits last year, June. So 4 months before I was publishing my book. Also, the reason I did the masquerade was it would force me to finish the book. Because let's be real, like I had 14 years at that stage of having this thing that I want to finish, but there was nothing definitively driving me to be like, oh, here's a date, it needs to be done. If you have hundreds of people that bought tickets to come to an event for you to launch your book, you need to have the book. So that's also why I'm starting the YouTube channel, because there's a sense of, I almost want to say, I think a lot of people are driven by the fear of public humiliation, which is valid because you die if the group pushed you out in the olden days. So it didn't pay to be a little weirdo back then, but now it does. Anyway, so I got my editor. She gave it to me back in June last year. And then just on like a final note with the other friend that I mentioned that gave like chapter for chapter feedback, I think that was probably one of the biggest compliments I got from not just a man, but a guy that didn't read fantasy at all. Like he was someone that read more like historical books and fiction, but more, I almost want to say, toned down, not romance, just your plain fiction, normal story, I almost want to say. But because I was his friend, he was willing to read this weird esoteric fantasy. And he ended up absolutely loving it, which I feel is a bigger compliment than someone that loves fantasy telling me that they love the book. And I ended up, well, not I ended up, the book ended up influencing him into reading more fantasy. So I feel pretty good about that. Pretty good. Pretty good. So that's basically how Charmed Vigilance came to be. Like I said, the mic died. I have insurance. I hope you can't see it, but it's a mic. I ended up giving my headphones away because I forgot that it was actually for the box. So I can't hear anything. But it's just in case this guy decides to leave the building again. And then I'm going to be very frustrated. So, yeah, that's why I look different. It was supposed to be 2 videos. It ended up being 40 minutes, so I wanted to split it in 2. But now here we are. But that's it. Until next time.